surprised you have it squared away this early. Like, I thought there's usually some openings still left.
Good evening. Welcome to the February 4th, 2025 City of Minot Planning Commission meeting. Call the roll.
Bauman,
Here?
Iverson,
Here.
Johnson, Kibler,
Here.
Longton,
Here.
Benham,
Here.
Offerdahl,
Here.
Fontanilla. Here. Trudell,
Here.
Amick, Doctor,
Here.
Erickson. We have a quorum.
Okay, with that, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 4.1, approval of the January 2025 regular meeting minutes. Can I get a motion?
I'd move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion to approve by Commissioner Kibler, second by Commissioner Pontanillo. Any discussion? Any discussion? All right, closing discussion. We'll call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Iverson,
Yes.
Kibler,
Yes.
Longton,
Yes.
Benham,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Fontanilla,
Yes.
Trudell,
Yes.
Doctor.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to public hearing. Agenda item 5.1, the Hills Edition, future land use map amendment, zoning map amendment, and preliminary plat, and interim use permit. Public hearing request by Lee Grossman of SW&L Attorneys, representing Margot Air, owner for the request of the future land use map amendment, zoning map amendment, preliminary plat, and interim use permit. The property is currently zoned R1, single-family residential district, with the requested rezoning to M1 light industrial district, with a future land use map amendment from suburban residential to light industrial. The requested interim use permit is for mining or extracting of aggregate resources. The legal description for the property is Outlot 34 and a portion of Outlots 44 and 45 of the Northeast Quarter, Southeast Quarter, Section 30, Township 155, Range 82, Ward County, North Dakota. Property address is 2100 Valley Street. That will turn it over to city staff for findings and report.
Chairman Offerdahl, members of the commission. Here we have the subject property outlined in black and the 600-foot notification buffer outlined in pink. The property is located at 2100 Valley Street. The preliminary plat is to subdivide into two lots, one to continue to be used for clay mining and the other to be used for a Ward County Water Resource Board stormwater project. The future land use map amendment is from suburban residential to light industrial. The zoning map amendment is from R1 single-family residential to M1 light industrial district. And the interim use permit is for mining and extraction of mineral resources. It's important to note that this is in the extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction and was brought in, and zoning was assigned based on the county zoning map. This property was partially zoned commercial, partially zoned industrial, and partially zoned residential on that map, and was given the R1 designation because a majority of this particular lot fell inside of the county's R1 zone. So I guess it's just important to note that this is inherited zoning, not necessarily was ever assigned by the city of Minot. It was brought in from the extraterritorial under these different designations and assigned one based on lot area. The letter of intent from the applicant can be found in the staff's written report. Here you can see the preliminary plat for the Hills addition. It consists of two lots. The one on the northwest side is the area that is Ward County Water Resource Board is hoping to build a stormwater project to deal with some of the erosion issues on the property. Current zoning is R1, single family. Surrounding area is zoned C2, M1, M2, and R1. The future land use is suburban residential. Adjacent land uses include suburban residential, general commercial, and light industrial. Here you can see some photos of the property facing southeast and facing northwest off of Valley Street, facing southwest into the access to the property. And then we have a photo on the right there that is showing the proposed area for the stormwater project. This is a very large property, and we are limited to the amount of access that we had to it. So these are really just showing the access point off of Valley Street and not the property as a whole, I guess. Here are the staff's finding of fact, and they can be found in the staff's written report. Staff recommendation is for the Planning Commission to adopt staff finding of fact and recommend City Council approve the major subdivision preliminary plat for Hills Addition, future land use map amendment to light industrial, and zoning map amendment to M1 light industrial. Staff also recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the staff finding of fact and approve the interim use permit for mining or extraction of oil, mineral, or aggregate resources within with the following conditions: that a termination date of January 1st, 2036 shall apply, and the owner shall complete land reclamation to return the property to a natural state at the termination of mining activities, or submit a development plan for a proposed development project. The final thing I'll point out is that January 1st, 2036 date is based on Public Works Department's projection that flood controls will be completed in 2035. So this pit has been used as an emergency pit during flood events to patch holes in levees and things of that nature. And so having these pits available close to the city and to the flood risk until flood controls are completed is seen as an asset to that department. So that is the reasoning why we have 2036. The beginning of 2036 is because 2035 we should see the projected completion of flood controls. With that, I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Any commissioners have any questions for city staff? Vice Chair Bauman.
Thank you for the presentation. Just for my understanding, and maybe asking for the public who might be watching, this site is currently used as an aggregate mining area, and so we're not necessarily changing the use of any of the mining that's happening. We're just breaking off a chunk of land that needs to be used for improved erosion control on the site.
Chairman Offerdahl, Vice Chair Bauman, that is correct. Currently, there is an aggregate, or it's a clay mine operating under legal non-conforming status. So this is an attempt to bring the entitlements into effect for a legal non-conforming use to allow a portion to be platted off for a stormwater control project. They have these legal non-conforming entitlements and could continue to operate the gravel pit as they have been with or without this permit. This permit just then codifies those entitlements. It also, with the zone change and this interim use permit, it brings in the oversight of the land development ordinance and grants the adjacent properties all of the protections that the land development ordinance provides for properties adjacent to an industrial activity like gravel mining.
Cool. Thank you. Follow-up question then. What is it that prompted the Water Resource Board project to kind of kick off or need to be done?
Chairman Offerdahl, Vice Chairman Bauman. It's my understanding that there is an erosion issue that is traveling from this property and into the Souris River itself, and it has disrupted some of the flood control surveys and things of that nature. It is creating a runoff, and sediment from this flow is bringing issues into the Souris River itself, which is a waters of the U.S. water. So it's important that we as a city get this under control so that we're not damaging that public trust asset.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Diedrichsen, just two questions, or really a request that you, how is it that this could be an R1 property designation when it's a pit? And you mentioned that it's the county's zoning designation, not the city's, but how can they differ so that this is an R1, has ever been an R1? And then two, I think maybe the more important question is, when you say that they have to, in the ordinance, bring this back to a natural state, I mean, this is arguably in a natural state now as a pit. Do they have to do more than that? Do they have to sod it and beautify it? Or what's the natural state to which they need to return it entail?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Kibler. So for your first question, not the entire property was not zoned R1 under the county. Portions of the property, the majority of the property on the west side. So when the city brings a property into the extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction from the county, we try our best to match the zoning in our zoning districts to the zoning that it has in the county. This particular property was not zoned along its property boundaries. A portion was zoned industrial, a portion was zoned commercial, and a portion was zoned residential. A majority portion was zoned residential, so the residential designation was applied to the entire property. It's a proportional thing. This is not a perfect process. What we're trying to avoid is creating non-conforming uses. It doesn't always work, and in this case, it failed to do that. So we ended up applying a residential zoning to a property that was being used for an industrial use. I'm not as familiar with the county ordinance as I used to be, but I don't believe that gravel mining is allowed in their residential zones either. This is one of those where there is no perfect system for bringing other zoning jurisdictions into our zoning jurisdiction. So that's where it landed when they had put it into the GIS map. As for your second question, for the natural state, that is primarily a weed control, planting something so that it doesn't become a weed infestation issue, that we don't get those invasive species coming in and taking root and blowing onto the adjacent properties and creating a weed issue. A natural state, they could plant some grass and some trees and some things, anything to prevent weeds from growing. That would be it was a grass hill before. If they can return it to a grass hill, that would meet the requirement, and that would be a condition of the interim use permit.
Okay, thank you. And just one follow-on. It's been brought into the city. It's been annexed by the city?
No, it's been brought into our zoning jurisdiction in the extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction. It's not within city limits. It's within our extraterritorial zone.
Okay, and that was done why? So that it could be brought before this board for approval rather than the county board, or why was that done?
2011? Okay. Oh, okay. So in the 70s, this was done. This is just part of our 2 mile. So we can control land uses adjacent to our city limits for growth. It's an urban growth area is what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for city staff? Okay, seeing none, I'll open the public hearing, and I'll give the applicant first availability if they're in the crowd to speak on behalf of this agenda item. Is there anybody on the applicant side that would like to speak?
I am Linda Langseth, and I represent the Air Melis. I appreciate you bringing up that it's the clay dirt mining and that it's used for the dike. I hear a lot of times people are saying gravel pit. I wish it was a gravel pit, and so I just really want to iterate that it's not a gravel pit, and we would be much happier if it was, but it is really just a clay. And I really want that to be in the minutes or the notes because that's important distinction there. That's my main comment.
Excuse me, can I ask you why it's important that it's clay rather than gravel?
Yes, well, gravel would be a lot more profitable. This is not a very profitable thing that's happening here at all. There's nobody watching the gate. That's why we have a gate on sometimes there were people going in and getting dirt that they weren't authorized to, so we did put a gate on there. So it is just a very small operation. So.
Thank you. Continue with the public hearing. Is there everybody in attendance that wishes to speak in favor of this agenda item? Is there anybody that wishes to speak in opposition of this agenda item? Feel free to come up if you can state your name and write. There should be a sheet of paper there for your name and your address. Appreciate it.
My name is Mike Baker. I am one of the property owners that is next door to this property. You guys probably seen me here before with the washout that's occurring and stuff like that. So on my behalf, we bought this property, 8 years ago? 2018. And since we bought this property's changed a ton from our neighbor's perspective. With it, there's many things of why we wouldn't want to live next to a gravel pit, right? I think every one of you guys up here would not want to live next to a gravel pit, and I would like you to think of that too. This gravel pit is 1.5 miles from this building right here, right? It's really close. When we first bought this property, it was zoned residential R1 when we looked at the property and bought it. There was no gravel being pulled from this property. What they're using some of the dirt for, or clay, is backfill, right? So they're using it as backfill. It's not just for the dike situation. It's a pretty large process. At one point, I got a hold of the tax guy, asking him why this was being allowed, and the tax guy told me that I was lying to him, that they're not pulling gravel out of this facility. And they were pulling a truckload every 10 minutes out of this property from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. It's a pretty large process that they have going. And then I would like to ask you guys is why would we want to change this to industrial location? Like this close to Minot. What was the purpose of wanting to change it from an R1 to a industrial application? I mean, is there any explanation of why we would want to change it to that?
Did you want me to? From our assessment, there's really no way to develop this property as residential, so we'd be creating a significant burden for the property owner. There is no city services in the way of sewer or water available to this property. It would be a multi-million-dollar project to bring those services down to this property and make it developable as residential. Topographical reasons also would make it very difficult to develop as any kind of residential neighborhood. We're venturing into the area where we're creating a burden on the property owner that could make the property unusable for the zone in which we've placed it.
So my question would be with that, right? I've been dealing with this for years now, with the washout. The washout that's occurring now on their property is now on our property, right? The county now wants to purchase that sliver of land. That's the reason why they're trying to rezone this to the M1 area, right? It was because the county wants to purchase this area. I went to the city and they told me the same thing. Oh, we can't build on that, right? And then I would say that's pretty foolish of you to say, because my house is on a hill. You look at 13th Street, all those houses are on hills. I don't have city water. I have well water. I don't have sewer. I have septic. I have the same things that we built in this beautiful community, and all my neighbors would say the same thing. My neighbors are pretty upset, and if this goes further, we're going to have an industrial establishment in our backyard, right? Nobody wants that, and I don't think any of you guys would want that either, right? It's non-conforming. When it came over from the county, like he said, it was mostly in residential area. Why that was never followed, it was, I don't understand that. Why do we have to live with the burden upon that? Because it was never followed or established into that location. So now what's happening now is there is a gravel pit. I'm calling it a gravel pit. The land in my place is pretty much all gravel, right? I have 20 acres right next to this property. It's pretty much all gravel. When we look at this, right, this washout is current on our property. It's a significant washout. It is flooding the river. I think I showed you guys pictures of that as well. The river is almost dammed all the way across, right? Typically, when you have a gravel pit or whatever, you have to maintain your washout that's occurring on that property. All of this washout, I mean, you're going to have more water because all that slivers down into the area where the county wants to buy. And for me, I want Minot to be beautiful. Everywhere we look in Minot, it seems like there's a gravel pit popping up, left and right? This is that close to Minot. Anybody that's coming to Minot from the southeast side of the state is going to drive past us, right? Anybody that goes to the state fair when they're on the Ferris wheel or something, they're going to see a gravel pit, any which way they look. We want this place to be beautiful. Sure, I want them to make as much money as possible off their property, but I want you guys to know that every one of us, me and my neighbors, want to make as much money off our property as well. If we through our property value, it's beautiful back there. I would encourage every one of you guys to come to this spot in Minot. It is beautiful. There's no reason that we're taking out every single coulee in Minot to make it a gravel pit. That's foolish. Minot's beautiful. We're growing. We're expanding. It's right down the road. You guys just spent tons of money on Valley Street, right? The truck traffic that's going on Valley Street from all of these loads of gravel and stuff that are going out there. What are they paying, right? The property values, my tax has been going up every year, every single year since I've been there, right? The tax commission or the tax lady called me up. Oh, it's because you have 5 acres. I ask you guys how much they're paying in taxes. It's not nearly as much as us homeowners are paying, right? This place is beautiful, beautiful. This is my heart and soul. I'm putting every penny that I make, earn, sweat, tears into my property. I don't want to see a gravel pit. And these gravel, when they're operating 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock at night. All I hear is backup sirens. And then if you make it M1, it's just going to continue it. You're just going to solve the problem, right? You're just going to, well, not solve the problem. You're just going to get rid of it. Whatever. We'll just change it to M1, industrial. Why? Industrial should be moving out of the city. Why are we bringing it into the city? I encourage you guys all to ask yourself that. Would you want to live next to a gravel pit? You could say that this has been going on for years. When I first moved there, they weren't pulling any gravel out of that property at all. At all. I asked them, there's a rule, you have ordinance. First off, is there any ordinances for the city of Minot for gravel pits? Is there? Because you guys, the city had told me no. They have nothing established for gravel pits in the city of Minot. The county does, the city didn't, right? These are the questions. So you're just letting them run free reign? Now you're going to adopt them into the city when you don't even have ordinances? The county,
Sorry, I'm just going to interject too. I'm his wife, Lexi Baker, same property. As you can see, we're pretty up, we have a young family, we've got dogs, we've got all these things in the area, and we love it so much. He moved to North Dakota, and basically our property is like, he tells everyone in Michigan, we have this piece of land. It is great. Like, come out here, come see it, come hunt with us, come fish with us. North Dakota's awesome. Like, he grew up in Detroit, and he's like, look at the life I'm living now. So when they started pulling clay, gravel, dirt, whatever you want to call it, out of there, he started doing some digging because he had some issues back home in Michigan on some of his family's property, and he's like, I don't want this to go too far. I thought he was going crazy. I was like, this isn't going to be a big deal. It has been the biggest deal. So they have really started taking off, and every time he's gone to someone new, they've told him something different. Oh, their grandfathered in. Well, if there was a pause in X many years, then they had to stop. Well, they didn't pause, and it's like they keep going back and forth. We weren't taking gravel out when they say if they weren't taking gravel out, they can do it now. But then all of a sudden, no, we haven't paused once. No one had the answers, and no one's had documentation. It's basically everyone doesn't have an answer, so they just keep saying, go to the next person, go to the next person, go to the next person. We've had an environmental scientist, we've had people from the city, we've had everyone out there helping us, and it's just been kind of frustrating because every time we bring something up, they just don't have an answer, so they just keep letting it go. So I guess that's why we're here. We just want that to stop because, I mean, it's not really fair. Their taxes that they're paying are significantly less than ours, and they've given us different answers for that too. They're like, oh, it's, what was it? Agricultural. They're not planting anything.
The county said agricultural. The city's zone residential R1. You look at the maps, it's zone residential R1. I called the county guy, I think I might have already mentioned this, said, hey, they're pulling gravel up. The county guy said, nope, no, they're not. I said, the tax guy, sorry, from the county. Nope, no, they're not. I said, yeah, they are. I'm watching them do it right now. Nope, no, they're not. Sir, I'm telling you, I'm watching them pull gravel. Well, I said to him, do you think I'm lying to you? This is a county guy. He goes out there, they tell him that they're only pulling 2 truckloads up. I have him on camera pulling it out way longer. Actually, at one point he said, oh, you know that property's posted, private property, you can't go on. I can see it from my house, sir. I can see these trucks, I can see it. I have pictures for you guys. I sent the city thousands of pictures now. Me and my wife have sent the city thousands of pictures about this washout, about the gravel pit that's going on.
And I think the thing is, too, is when we first moved in there, I think our relationship with them, we love to be friendly with our neighbors and stuff. So he had a number, and he'd call them whenever someone would be, like, hot rodding on a motorcycle. He'd even stop them. We're like, once again, this isn't just because we're like, oh, they're taking this out. It's just genuinely because he wants people to be happy with their land, and he thinks, and we do think, I grew up here, so to me it's kind of old hat to have land, right?
And I'm still gonna like it. I understand the fact that everybody wants to make money off the property. I get that, but so do we. We're like I said, we're putting every dollar into our property, making it better.
We bought a fixer-upper. We've spent hundreds of thousands already, so it's hard to know that the money that we're investing could be worth a lot more if they're looking over at more green grass, things like that, instead of an industrial pit. And then what happens when all the gravel gets out? Can they build something new there, like a plant? It's zone industrial. Can they sell that land to then operate with other things?
What I would say is someone's intentions today might not be the same intentions tomorrow. You guys allow this land to be pillaged.
Could I just get you to get to the mic so everybody can hear?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So all I want to say is someone's intentions today might not be the same intentions tomorrow. This is 77 acres, ladies and gentlemen. 77 acres, 1.5 miles from the downtown area of Minot. That's going to be a gravel pit. Potentially, we're talking about zoning it M1. That's crazy to me. I asked the city, would I ever do this? Would I ever think about this? I have 20 acres. All it is hills. Hey, if they're going to pull out gravel, why can't I? Nope, you can't. Can't do it. Can't do it, right? Well, that's foolish. Nor would I. Nor would I ever. It's beautiful. If you guys went there, again, it's beautiful. There's no reason we're taking out every coulee in the city of Minot to make it look like a gravel pit. That's my thought behind it. And the washout that's happening, that needs to be taken care of.
When you asked why did this happen, probably because he also came to the city because it is ruining all of the land in between there, and then they had to do some investigating, and it did come through. The city has already done some work to help improve it, so thank you. And the county is coming through too. They want to improve that as well, and so we love that. Like, that's great. That will help us. That's wonderful. It's just the fact that we then want to make it so they're technically in the right. It would be an industrial. Because in our mind, they shouldn't have been taking this at all because it's zoned residential, but it's just been grandfathered in for,
That's what they say.
that's what we've been incurring to. So now we don't want it to go industrial because we're like, great, then what they're doing is fine. Because we've been trying to figure out a way to like not have that happen. Because it has been pretty frustrating to see what it was like when we first moved to now.
What I'm gonna say is, the county came out. We had engineers come onto our property from the county, from Bismarck. They came to our property. They told us that the water washout that is occurring, which they want to purchase from the heirs now, right? That's already 10 feet onto my property. When I first started talking about this to the city, about the problem that's been happening on my property 4 years ago, it was 150 yards off the property line. The city of Minot's had to pay to dredge out the river, right? You guys we're still talking about a flood protection project till 2035 when all this gravel's going into the river. I would encourage every one of you guys to look at the GIS map and see where the gravel's going into this river. It's almost dammed it off completely. And we're still working on this flood protection project, right? So now the county wants to come in, and then the first thing, boom, nope, we have to rezone them to make it legit, right? The first thing, right? So now they can get to do whatever they want with the gravel, right? M1, which has many different uses in it, M1. But with this case coming through, they said, the engineers said if they stopped it at the bottom, it wouldn't continue to go upward, right? They've been pulling gravel out of there for how long? I get mixed messages. They're not pulling it out. They're pulling it out. They only pull out a little bit. It's been pulled out since the 70s. It's not pulled out. Everywhere else in this world, if you have a gravel pit, you have to manage your runoff, right? All this water off this property shed now is going to go into this cutoff, into this washout, right? Has there been any engineering controls to that for the watershed? I don't know. This is all, it's just a mess. I hope you guys seriously look at this. We would hate to have a M1 zoned area in our backyard.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
And we'll
thank
call you back up if we have any
Do you have a
questions.
question? Oh, okay.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious. I mean, if it's gravel, if it's clay, it's not a lot of profit. If it's gravel, there is. You've said it's gravel being pulled out of there. You said you've sent photos. We don't have any photos. We've not seen any photos.
So I'm dealing with someone that works for the city directly about the washout, water board, water resource board. I sent every photo that I have possible, right? You're the one that
And
sent them.
we can send it here too. We sent it to the last, so I think kind of what brought up the water project where the city started working on some different stuff and then the county came in with the washout. He brought pictures to show that was going on to just the city council meeting. So we haven't sent it because this is different. This is the planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we might not have sent it to the planning council, but we can definitely do that.
The washout, so the city is working on a project as well. The city's working on a project on the north or the south side by Wesley Truck Center, where that's at. There's 3 holding ponds up there. That now has been fixed. There was a huge washout occurring right on the downstream side of 2 culverts that the city had put in play at the top side of this property. So there's a significant amount of water that's coming from the top side of the property by Wesley Truck Center, and there's a significant amount of water coming off of what we would deem a dirt pit, clay pit, gravel pit, whatever it is, right? Mineral extraction zone that's going into this. This thing is over 17 feet deep, 35 feet across. We lost a huge tree this year and soon to lose a lot of land off this project, right? Or off this property. There's something that's going on here, but trying to fix it all by making this property an industrial area, I just don't think is wise. That's all I got. And we will, whatever you guys want, we'll send them to you guys, all the pictures that we have. The city already has them.
You can come out to our yard anytime too.
Yes.
He loves to take people on rides in the side-by-side to see everything, so
Only
Just
when
let
it's
us know.
warm. It's, might be a little difficult now.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would wishes to speak in opposition of this agenda item?
Chairman Alfredall, I have an email I received this morning from Rustin Rutliak from Houston Engineering. He represents Brian Beater. The letter is as follows. Chairman Offerdahl and members of the Planning Commission, we are writing on behalf of Mr. Brian Beater, owner of Lot 1, Waldorf, 2nd Edition, located adjacent to the subject property for case 2025-1, Ayers Hills Amendment, future land use map, future zoning map amendment, prelim plat, and interim use permit. Mr. Beater does not oppose the map amendments or plat, but would like to express concerns related to the aggregate mining operation associated with the interim use permit. Mr. Beater has not been opposed to the intermittent and borrow operations that have been conducted on the Air Addition property in past years. However, he has tenants and is concerned that large-scale mining operations could be disruptive, noise, dust, light, etc., if conducted in close proximity to the tenants. The concern would be lessened if the mining operations would be maintained at a distance of 600 feet or greater from the shared property line between Mr. Beater's property and the Air Hills Addition property. I believe Mr. Rutliak is in the audience, and he's willing to stand for questions.
Actually, do have a question.
Okay. Vice Chair Bauman?
Mr. Rutliak, as you're making your way up here, I know you are far more well-versed than I in terms of surveying and engineering. I'm curious if, in your professional perspective, is 600 feet from shared property lines a attainable and valid limitation on use of that property for aggregate mining while still maintaining the integrity of other properties?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Bauman, the only reason we picked 600 feet, and this was on behalf of Mr. Beater, was he just wanted we'll call it a buffer zone there. And again, I don't want to have a perception that we're against or opposed to this project, because as Mr. Beater has indicated, there has been some clay being taken off of that property for a number of years that he understands, and he's not opposed to that operation because it's quite a distance away from his property right now. One of the concerns that he did bring up was the aggregate mining. When it was termed aggregate mining, that kind of gives an indication of more like a gravel pit, like they're doing a crushing, stockpiling operation where there'd be big stockpiles and crushing and so on, maybe even screening operations. That would be a different operation than what we understand to be occurring right now. What we understand to be occurring right now is just loading trucks and getting them off of the property. So again, we don't have Mr. Beater does not have a strong opposition to that portion of it, as long as there is some buffer to the tenants that he has on his property.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, anybody else wish to
Chairman
speak?
Offerdahl, if I could just point out that aggregate mining is part of a use table definition classification. It's all encompassing for extracting gravel, minerals, all. It's just it doesn't entitle them to aggregate mining in that sense. It's just part of a use table definition, so we have to use that terminology. Sorry, I just wanted to give that clarification.
No, appreciate it. Public hearing still open. Anybody who wishes to speak for or against this item?
I've had to sit quietly and listen to some of the comments, so I just have to cut back up here. There have been zero gravel going out of here. This land has been in my family, our family, for years, going back to the 50s, 60s. We have provided the clay and the soil in the 70s for some 76 flood mitigation going on. This is not anything new, like our neighbor would have you believe. This has been happening. When he bought the land, he would have walked to the edge and seen it. Granted, he cannot see it from his house. I don't believe, I've never been in his house, but I can't see his house from there. I don't see how this is affecting his view. It was happening when he bought the land. It now is, we didn't know it was residential. I feel that had we been doing this since the 70s, and then so like a grandfathered in that he had said, that this is something that should not be taken away from us. We have been doing, and it's not even a big thing that we're doing here. I'm just, yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of the things that you've said were not truths, and I wanted to get up here and point some of these things out. So I wish our lawyer was here actually, because he would know how to handle this much better.
Thank you. Public hearing still open, yep.
Can I walk around? Would you care? Is that something I could do?
Absolutely. Anybody?
So, this is from my property line. You see that big bulldozer, trucks, mini trucks, every 10 minutes, pulling out. They say no gravel. Like I said, I've seen them where they're dropping these truckloads off, right? They're using them as backfill.
Yeah.
For the audience at home, please.
So, when we first bought this place, you guys could all look at GIS maps. We can say it's a little bit, right? Like I said, when the tax guy went to them, they said 2 truckloads, right? 2 truckloads. That next day, after that guy said 2 truckloads, from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night, they were pulling gravel out of there. It's not a small, and if it's small, why is it a deal? Why is it a deal? Make it residential. Leave it residential. They already got a paintball course up there, right? The paintball course, I had to come in front of the city council for the paintball course, right? That's not a problem. I actually like the paintball course. I like the guys that are running it, right? That wasn't a problem. There was a couple problems at first, right? Actually, one of the paintball guys that owns the paintball company said, "You don't make trouble for us, I won't make trouble for you." That's what he said to me when he came to my property line, because I was looking at it. He was right on the property line. They cleared out a bunch. And that paintball course is right next to where this washout's occurring. That paintball course is going to be using the same driveway, the same little path to Valley Street as this gravel operation. I have the same hills. You guys, if you guys drive back there, they're all hills back there, right? And again, I think it's foolish, very foolish of us to say that we can't develop houses on hills. There's so many hills in Minot where there's houses. 13th Street, $1 million houses. The houses in my area, there's a house that just went up, my next door neighbor's house, 1.2 mil. Another house right next door, 960,000. Another house across the coulee, 650,000. You could build beautiful houses on coulees. That gravel, you already see there, with that picture that I'm showing you, they're piling the gravel up. There's dust in the air. They're going till 7 o'clock at night. Like I said, I understand they want to make as much money off their property as possible. Me and my wife want our investment of our property to stay the same or grow, right? Like anybody that buys a house and puts their blood, sweat, and tears in that house to rebuild it. They want that property value to go up. This has been very discouraging. It eats at my heart, eats at my soul when I come home. I have children, Every time this is not tough for me to come in front of you guys either. This isn't tough. I have small children. We go down, we play on this property. Many of my friends, family come over. We play on the property. We love it. Anybody that comes to my house from Minot, we do a big 4th of July party at my house. They think it's beautiful. Minot is beautiful. We should keep it being that way. That's all I got. Yeah.
One question for you. The picture there, that is from your house, or
That's from my house.
From the property line, or from sitting
No,
in your house?
that's from my house.
Okay.
So where my house is at, you walk over 50 feet, right? We got a flat spot on top of a hill. I'm on top of a hill, right? Right there on top of the hill. You're seeing it clear as day now. For some reason, this gravel pit is coming straight to the west. They're not going to the east. They're not going to the south. They're taking the hill off straight to the west. They topped a hill off where I could see straight into that gravel pit now. And that's why I encourage every single one of you guys to come to my property. You will see it for yourself. The guys that came over from the county, they seen that. The engineers seen that.
Mr. Chairman, I would just point out, and I'm very sympathetic to your plight,
Yep.
but I didn't see any gravel in that photo.
Yep.
I saw a side dumper and some sand. There wasn't any gravel there.
Well, that's fine. The definition of gravel could be different from you, me, whatever. Gravel, what would that be? Rock, aggregate, sand, all that?
Yep, gravel.
Yeah, gravel. Yep.
Maybe, I guess
That
sand
picture.
would be aggregate too, under the definition, but
Yep, that's fine. Do people use clay to use for backfill? I don't know.
I believe they do. But
I don't know.
if the distinction is between clay and gravel,
I don't think it
that was
matters.
no illustrative instance of gravel in that side dumper.
The only reason why I say that, sir, is because, well, first off, thank you for the explanation. I don't think that when it comes to gravel or whatever, that the what would you call it? Aggregate, gravel, clay, I believe all that falls into that. I don't care if it's gravel, clay, black dirt, sand, whatever it is, scoria, whatever it is, they're taking that out of there. Well, does gravel matter to me? Absolutely not. If it's clay, why is it a big deal?
Okay, if I could just follow up on that, and you had made a distinction between gravel
Well,
as
so
opposed to
if you-
clay.
if you come
and,
to my
and I
house-
understand that I would be as upset as you are
Yep.
about this. I'm just a little curious. Was this operation in place when you guys moved there?
No, nope, it was not. Actually, I believe that the heirs had sued the city of Minot. At some point during that lawsuit, I believe that they said they were not removing gravel from the property. I don't know if that's true. You would have to do your research on that. At that time, it was not being pulled. When we first moved there, no. When the paintball courts was put there, no, right? No. Am I wrong? I mean, do I have to prove it, or would they have to prove it? I don't know. And then the other thing is, well, how do you prove if they go a year without pulling gravel out? Well, how do you do that? I don't know. I don't know how you do that. And again, like I said, clay, dirt, whatever it is, doesn't matter. They're taking it out. They're flattening it off. We're talking about rezoning it to the M1 area.
I've got a question for you.
Yep.
You said your neighbor just built a house there?
No. They're selling a house next to me.
Yeah, I thought you said that your neighbor built a $1 million house.
Nope, there's a house for sale for 1.2 mil. My next door neighbor.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey, thank you. We'll call you up if we have any other further questions. Sir, if you can state your name and then also sign the sheet for me, that would be greatly appreciated.
Sure. My name is Bruce Langseth. I'm a relative to the ownership families, I guess. And I just wanted to go on record. The whole zoning thing is kind of grandfathered through back and forth. The reason this has come before you guys, I believe, is that it was zoned in R1 when they noticed it. And that's why they pointed it out, because it was never an R1 that they knew of. It's been in their family for generations. The R1s have creeped in on their land, if you want to look at it that way. They don't make money off of it. They try to make enough to pay for the taxes. They're elderly. And that's the clarification I wanted to make.
Okay.
It was changed to R1 somehow without even them knowing it. But the dirt, and I'll call it the dirt that's been removed there, was used to build the bypass that goes over the railroad tracks there through the county. It's been used for the flood diking and mitigation when we had the disaster there. So it's been used for years and years, and it's not a big moneymaker. The intent is to pay the taxes. But I'll let them speak further on that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Agenda item 5.1, public hearing is still open. If anybody wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition of this agenda item, now is your time. Anybody wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and I'm going to turn it over to the commissioners for a motion. And once we receive a motion, we can have a discussion.
Well, I understand that no one wants to make a motion on this because it's a very difficult situation where both parties have a kind of a legitimate argument, it seems to me. And I guess before I make a motion, I would ask, is there any sort of provision that we could make that would give some benefit to both parties, like a limited amount of time to mine? Mr. Diedrichsen or
I would recommend that we just make a motion currently on what is in front of us, and then during the discussion portion, we can discuss that, and then it can be an amendment of some sort, but let's go ahead and just make a motion on what has been put in front of us.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move to approve staff recommendations and IUP conditions with an additional condition, and that is a 600-foot buffer zone shall remain in place between adjacent property lines and the extractive use.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll
I
second.
will second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Vice Chair Bauman, and sorry, Commissioner Iverson, Commissioner Trudell beat you to it. So we got a second by Commissioner Trudell. Okay, any discussion? And I guess I'll start off here. I just want to clear something up real quick, and this is for city staff. Currently, if we were to approve this, or if we were to deny this, they would continue to be able to do what they're currently doing right now. Is that correct?
Chairman Offerdahl, by denying this application, what would be prevented is the Ward County Water Resource Board stormwater project. I know this is it's a difficult and kind of convoluted process, but in order to do that plat, we need to bring the entitlements into place on the property because our platting rules don't allow for us to plat non-conforming lots.
Correct.
So we would land on a non-conforming lot being platted, which is not allowed for in the land development ordinance. We got to get the entitlements in place to do the plat, and the plat has to be in place to get the stormwater project. And the stormwater project is what's going to stop that washout and all of that sediment going into the river and save us the money on dredging and hopefully stop that creeping of that erosion problem. So, yes, if it were denied tonight, they could continue to mine dirt. We'll just go with the dirt term. Whatever they're pulling out of there, the dirt they're pulling out of there could be continued to be mined under their legal non-conforming status. And I kind of go back to some of the questions that were asked, like, how can we prove it? And that's where we land with. If we wanted to do a zoning enforcement case, what do I bring to the legal department as evidence that they're in violation of this legal non-conforming status? In order to do a zoning enforcement case, I have to bring evidence to the legal department in order to do that. And we do not have the staff to police and monitor every non-conforming use happening within the city of Minot to kind of bring those cases. Sometimes we're going off satellite imagery and things of that nature. So I guess that's the best I can answer your question. Yes, they could continue to mine with or without a favorable ruling on this application.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Any further questions for our discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Diedrichsen, just this stormwater project, is this of benefit to the city as well as to the residents across the way who've got their land impeded on or overrun by water?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Kibler, I've not seen any site plans or any of the plans for this project. It has only been introduced by the Ward County Water Resource Board as a stormwater and runoff mitigation project. It was pointed out that one of the reasons they want to do this is to stop the sediment from getting into the river. I'm not entirely certain of all of the details, but I would imagine that if they're investing this amount of money, that they have an engineered plan to mitigate these problems, because they're looking to solve this problem. That's what they want to do with this project. The goal is to slow the water down, slow the sediment down. Like most stormwater projects, the goal is to stop erosion.
If I may ask, is a 600-foot buffer in any way acceptable to you as residents?
That's a tough question. We probably wouldn't be here today.
We could step up to the mic, that'd be, public hearing's kind of closed.
That's a tough question. Like I said, we probably wouldn't be here today if they weren't coming to the east, or the west, our way. They're taking out a whole hill. I don't know, the amount of water that's going down into that culvert system, which, like I said, Ward County came out with their engineers to look at this, and it's a lot. When they seen the amount of damage that's happening down there, it's a lot.
Okay,
I would have to see.
I gotta stop you right there.
Yep.
We need to, the public hearing is officially closed,
Oh,
so.
sorry. I would have to see how far.
Yes or no?
Yeah,
or
yes or
maybe
no, so.
Maybe so. I would have to
Okay.
see where that's at. I just can't
Sorry.
picture it in my
We
head.
gotta follow
Sorry.
protocol.
Yeah.
So, nope, the public hearing is closed. I apologize for that. So,
Commissioner Offerdahl, members of the Planning Commission, I just wanted to note that there are certain criteria that Planning Commission should observe when considering the conditions attached to an interim use permit. They are in the land development ordinance. And then I would also note that a quick look at the GIS with the measuring tool appears to show that the removal of material is already occurring within 600 feet of the property boundary. Again, it's a legal non-conforming use, if I'm stating that correctly, and we should be cautious to not pick arbitrary and capricious numbers, things, items here. We should have a rationale that complies with the land development ordinance for whatever direction the body goes with that. Thank you.
thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, with that, we can call to roll on this, I guess in the discussion portion. I guess our procedure here is, we can follow suit with the motion on the board or on the table here that Vice Chair Bauman has submitted, and then if there's Vice Chair Bauman.
Thanks. I'm having difficulty figuring out how I'm going to vote on my own motion following the recommendation from our legal department. So I'm wondering if our city planner and economic development director and assistant city planner can provide some guidance of, is there a way, per Mr. Beater's request and per, I'm Baker, right? Yep. The Bakers, that cannot be a capricious and arbitrary number, as thrown out there, but would keep us from getting in trouble legally, but would also provide a little bit of reassurance and maybe protection against future extraction and impacts on their property for the property owners that are adjacent. Please share your wisdom.
Chairman Offerdahl, Vice Chairman Bauman, there's the reasoning behind not including a buffer distance is because, as our Assistant City Attorney brought up, there is no criteria that I could find in the interim use permit that allowed me to place some number, like what would have been my rationale to say, oh, you have to say 200 or 300 or 100 feet. I can tell you that by going to an M1 zoning, the adjacent residential properties would be afforded all of the protections that our LDO provides for all residential properties adjacent to commercial and industrial uses. We have buffer yards and we have landscaping requirements, and all of those things would now apply to this properly zoned M1 property that provides protection for adjacent residentials. Those would all be enforced as just part of the land development ordinance, as ordinance of the city. As far as any damages that would occur to adjacent properties as a result of the actions on that property, that would be a civil issue between the property owners. You're not allowed to damage your neighbor's property either. So if that answers your question.
It does, but it also raises two more questions. Am I able to ask those?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Discussion's still open.
Next question. Do we have, Mr. Baker implied that there was erosion such that, like, has their property washed away? Like, are they sitting on a lot of land where the land doesn't exist because it's washed away? Was it anecdotal? I mean, I also am not an expert, and I don't go out and survey my property lines. So I guess I'm not much of an expert, but if there has been damage to their property already, I guess I'd at least love to know about it in considering things.
Chairman Offerdahl, Vice Chair Bauman, claims of water flowing from one property to another and causing damage are brought to the Ward County Water Resource Board. They handle those issues. So they would be the body to bring those to.
Shoot. Okay. I'm sorry. We don't know the answer to that. And I don't know that we're going to. And I know that's not the answer you want to hear. But my second question then would be, so the buffer yard between an industrial and a residential property is fairly robust, like to protect a homeowner from impacts of a industrial activity. Do they meet those requirements already, or is that going to be a requirement then for the Air family to then mitigate and put all of those buffers in place? And do we know if that's something that they're supportive of then?
Chairman Offerdahl, Vice Chairman Bauman, currently it would not be required to be built now. They could operate as they have been operating in the situation in which they are operating. The thought was brought up, today's intentions are not tomorrow's intentions. Any future development would be required to fully comply with all of those buffer yard requirements in the LDO. So it's one of those things where they can continue to do what they are doing under the current circumstances. However, if they did want to put in, and this is M1 light industrial, so we're not talking about major factories here, we're talking about manufacturing or things of that nature, most, down there adjacent to what's existing, likely agricultural, something of that nature. That's what that area has been developed as so far. Would require the full compliance with the the buffer yards and landscaping and things of that nature. If a site plan for development were brought in, it would have to be fully compliant. But that's future development. Currently, it would be able to operate as it is.
Okay. And just from the layperson's perspective, that's kind of a deterrent from maybe necessarily putting in a heavy or a light industrial, a light industrial use, because that would require some landscaping changes and costs that would go with it, whereas just letting it go fallow or be seeded, and restored to landscape would be a much cheaper, more cost-effective end of this.
Chairman Offerdahl, Vice Chair Bauman, in the scope of an industrial development, the landscaping and those buffer yard requirements would be a small drop in the bucket compared to the overall development cost of them. Say if you're going to build a small manufacturing plant, a couple $1 million, what's $10,000 worth of trees type of things. So I doubt it would make or break any industrial development in the future. It would be entirely up to the owners and the developer what they wanted to do. It would just have to comply with all of the requirements of the LDO.
Go ahead.
I guess my question would be, the termination date of January 1st, 2036, are they prohibited then from that point simply doing the clay mining, or they be prohibited from any other light industrial activity on that property?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Longton, that is the termination date of the interim use permit for the aggregate clay. That use definition mining, they are always welcome to come in and apply for another interim use permit. Interim use permits differ from conditional use permits in that they must have an end date. So we picked an end date that was kind of coincided with the use it's been used for before. At that date, they can apply for a new interim use permit and come back to this body at that time. They can cease mining operations, but that would really be their only option. It would still be zoned industrial and could do any permitted by right use in the M1 column or apply for a conditional use permit for any in there. Again, that new development then would have to comply with all of those buffer yards and protections for adjacent residential properties.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Does the M1 zoning, are there adjacent M1 properties next to this, or is it a one-off spot zone?
Chairman Offerdahl, Vice Chair Bauman, there are both adjacent M1 and M2 properties.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Diedrichson, so this interim permit through 2036, we could really make this an interim permit for 5 years and see what developed over the course of 5 years with them mining whatever aggregate comes out of that pit?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Kibler, the end date was negotiated with the applicant. It would be up to them whether they would want to continue to pursue this permit with such a short time frame. Again, they have legal non-conforming rights and can continue to do this indefinitely with or without the permit.
And the only loss really here is that stormwater management project would not continue if we denied this application?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Kibler, in order to plat the land for the stormwater project, we need to bring the entitlements in place with the activity.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay. We will call to roll on the current approved motion by Vice Chair Bauman, which also includes the 600-foot boundary. Call the roll.
Bauman,
No.
Iverson,
No.
Kibler,
No.
Longton,
No.
Menum,
No.
Offerdahl,
No.
Montanila,
No.
Trudell,
No.
Doctor.
No.
Motion failed.
Okay, with that, we will open it up for discussion. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I guess, I think the process here now is that we can go back out for a motion. I'm assuming that there was a possibility of an amendment to the motion, so that's why I opened it up for discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And just to give the planning commissioners a few more seconds to think about the motion that they'd like to make in their decision. I just want to let everyone in the audience know that planning commission is just making a recommendation tonight that'll be forwarded to the city council and will be heard at their meeting on Tuesday, February 22nd, I believe.
Yes.
We have President's Day that Monday, so it'll be the third Tuesday of February.
Remind you, it's Tuesday.
Okay?
They will be making a final decision on the interim use permit tonight.
But that's
the
contingent
plat,
upon the rezone.
and contingent upon
Yeah.
the rezone, the
Right.
plat, and the future land use map amendment being approved by the city council.
So yes, I just wanted to second that too, is this is merely an advisory board that we make recommendations to city council. In this situation, it's a tough situation because I see both sides as well. I do want to thank you guys for your valuable input in this conversation. We kept it professional and respectful, so thank you. I mean, this process doesn't work if people don't come up and speak their mind, so I appreciate that. With that, we can turn it over to commissioners for a motion.
I'll move to approve based on staff findings of fact.
I'll second.
Okay, so we got a motion to approve by Commissioner Longton and a second by Commissioner Kibler. Any further discussion? Vice Chair Bauman?
I want to echo your sentiment about participation in this process, and just it takes a lot of bravery to come up and share your thoughts and to have a healthy discourse and a rebuttal back and forth. I think there's value to that. I'm going to be voting to recommend yes, not out of ignorance of any of the complaints or the concerns that have been brought. I, like my colleagues, want to say we hear you and we understand. But I'm going to recommend that we move forward because I feel like this is going to be a big solution with getting that water diversion plan and the water resource board being able to do the project, because voting no or nothing, I'm worried that the applicant is going to walk away and do nothing, which would continue the same problem. I don't think it would provide relief for anyone. And this is, well, not the perfect solution because tried that and it wasn't legal. So we'll like look with what we can do, and I feel like this is maybe the best legal solution that we have. So I guess to those present, I want you to know my thought process, and I imagine it might be the same thought process for some of my colleagues, that this is trying to move the best solution forward that we have right now legally with that. I know it's not perfect. I know feelings won't all be resolved with that, but I just want you to know some of the thought there, and for the general public as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Iverson,
Yes.
Kibler,
Yes.
Longton,
Yes.
Menum,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Pontanila,
Yes.
Trudell,
Yes.
Doctor.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you again, good, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5.2, LDO text amendment, public hearing request by Brian Billingsley, Community and Economic Development Director representing the City of Minot for request of Land Development Ordinance text amendment to add section 2.26, 1 through 4 GC overlay. Gateway Corridor Overlay District in order to establish this new overlay district. to assist the city in corridor beautification goals and amendments of Section 4.1 through 7, industrial uses focusing on relaxing setback regulations for certain industrial uses. Section 3.1-10, outdoor lighting to amend language in the land development ordinance to refer to municipal codes. Section 4.1-3, rural land development ordinance to, rural and agricultural uses regarding agricultural uses on residential lots outside the city limits. Section 3.1-9, commercial industrial district fencing standards. Section 7.1-4, screening requirements to relax requirements of fencing standards on commercial lots. Section 7.1-4, requiring landscaping. Section 7.1-2, general requirements, and Section 7.13, minimum landscaping requirements to amend allowed landscaping within the city right-of-way. With that, we'll turn it over to city staff for findings and report.
Chairman Offerdahl, members of the commission. So this is just a bunch of cleanup text amendments that I and staff put together. So the first recommendation is the Gateway Overlay Corridor District. So this would be an overlay district. If we saw some cases come through here, does it make sense to zone every single gateway just commercial just because of the design standards that we're going after? It may or may not. So this, we're not making any recommendations on placement. I'd like to have a working meeting with you as the planning commission to kind of look at all of our corridors and brainstorm on where the best places to put this gateway corridor would be. But this would allow for industrial, commercial, residential, all different kinds of zones to go into our gateway and then place these design standards over top of that in an overlay district. So regardless of the underlying zoning, we can reach our gateway corridor beautification goals. And so again, this is just the establishment of that district. So we're just establishing a gateway corridor district in the LDO. It becomes a tool in your toolbox is what we're doing here. Recommendation 2 is for industrial uses. We're on to one of those arbitrary numbers we found in our LDO of this 1,000 feet. And Dan and I did a significant, especially Dan, I'll give him credit on that, did a significant amount of research, and we just cannot figure out where this 1,000 feet came from. So we are looking at it as, let's look at it on a case-by-case basis and discuss this with our engineering staff and our fire inspector staff. And when we're looking at the storage of hazardous materials, what are the adjacent land uses, and is this a dangerous place to put it or not? And assessing, most of these are conditional use. This is a conditional use. So only we would bring it to you as the planning commission, and you'd be able to assess these hazardous material storages and the context in which they are looking to develop it, and with recommendations from engineering and fire, is this a safe place for it, instead of relying on this arbitrary number again. Recommendation 3 is outdoor lighting. There's been quite a bit of talk about this, both here and at the City Council. The City Council passed on first reading last night their municipal code, outlining the requirements for outdoor lighting. The recommendation here is to remove it from the land development ordinance and move it into municipal code. There was the sentiment here that it should be regulated, and the City Council did take heed to that, and they're not against regulating outdoor lighting. They just want to regulate it through the municipal code, the legal department, and the PD, not through zoning code. We don't have the staff and the resources to really enforce something like that. Legal and the police department, they do. So it was the decision was made at council, let's move it out of the LDO and into municipal code and let them handle the policing of outdoor lighting. So this section 23-113 to the Municipal Code of Ordinances was passed on first reading, which means that ours would go to first reading at the next meeting, and then theirs would go to second reading, and ours would go to second reading at the next meeting, and we would bring it out of the LDO and into municipal code. Recommendation 4 has to do with animal husbandry in the extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction. Again, we had this restricted to rural residential, but in the extraterritorial zone, we have R1 lots that are 5 and 8 acres, and those folks are a little disappointed that they're not allowed to have some chickens too. And so if you're outside of city limits, we are just removing the restrictions on having animals, and it would fall back to the state's requirement, each animal unit. You're allowed a certain number of animal units per acre, and you would need to be in compliance with the state's requirements of animal units per acre. That would be then governing how many animals you could have on your property. Recommendation 5, this has to do with commercial fencing standards, removing the black powder coating requirement for fencing material and allowing for chain link fencing with privacy slats, with or without privacy slats within the commercial zones. This is a continuation. It's a large piece of text containing this. Recommendation 6 comes out of our engineering department. They wanted to remove the prohibition on landscaping rock inside of the city's right-of-way. Since the city engineering department has jurisdiction over the right-of-way, we brought their recommendation to you. This is, again, a continuation. It's quite a bit of text that deals with this. Here is staff's finding of fact, and it can be found in staff's written report. Staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt staff finding of fact and recommend approval to the City Council of the zoning text amendments as provided in Exhibit 1 of the staff's written report. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for city staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Diedrichsen, just out of curiosity, when you mentioned relaxing setback regulations within the Gateway corridor for certain industrial uses, can you give some examples of the kind of uses that would benefit or be acceptable to have less setback?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Kibble, those were two different things. The Gateway Corridor is an overlay district that hasn't been applied yet. It's just creating a new tool in the LDO. The setback relaxation it's specifically for one use. It's storage of hazardous chemicals. What we're running into is ag suppliers that are now having to be 1,000 feet from any classified road. With us being brought into metro status and having an MPO and having so many classified roads within our metro area, they're having a very difficult time finding any properly zoned properties outside of 1,000 feet from any classified road. That would be like, minor collector. They would have to be 1,000 feet from a minor collector road. And how do you get the type of vehicles that you're transporting bulk agricultural chemicals on down local roads 1,000 feet? And then again, discussing this, it is kind of an arbitrary number. We could not figure out how they landed on 1,000 feet. We went to fire. Is there a fire code that requires them to be this far? Is there a NDDOT requirement? No. We cannot figure out where this 1,000 feet came from. And so at that point, it becomes an arbitrary number. And we thought that it was more important to bring in the opinions of the experts, the engineering department and the fire department, on these cases, which are always conditional. For storage of hazardous chemicals is always a conditional use. So it will always come to you as the Planning Commission with the recommendations from all city staff on, is this safe or is this not safe? And then you can assess it on each case on its merits and the context in which they want to place this, instead of just putting an arbitrary number on it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think that helps. It's a problem because different chemicals have got different flash points, and different kinds of chemicals are needed to put out some of the fires that come with this sort of fertilizers and ag type of
One
chemicals.
of the conditions that is always applied to a conditional use for storage of hazardous chemicals is that the list must be approved by the fire marshal. That's actually outlined in our LDO, that condition be applied in any time there's storage of hazardous materials. The applicant must provide a list of all of those hazardous materials to the fire marshal for approval. And that's so that when our firefighters show up, they have the proper gear to protect themselves from whatever might be on fire in there.
Yeah, it's important.
Standard fire protection may or may not protect you from some of these things. So
Yeah, they've got to have those chemicals on hand, given what chemicals are in their district. I did have just one more question and then a comment. So is that 20 rabbits per acre that you can have in that ET zone? I just didn't know how many acres you needed for
Chairman
20
Offerdahl,
rabbits.
Commissioner Kibler, you can actually find that table in the North Dakota Century Code. Each animal is designated a value, and you are allowed a certain number of animal units.
Units,
per
yes,
acre.
magical units.
So there could be 500 chickens to a unit, and you're allowed 1 unit per acre. I mean, it can get ridiculous with some of the smaller animals.
So you're referring to real rabbits here or rabbit units?
That's outlined. Each rabbit, it may.
Because it's like 1.5
of
hogs for a
1/100th
unit,
of a
right?
unit, and then yes, you could have 100 unit. If you could have 1 animal unit per acre, and a rabbit is worth 1/100th of an animal unit.
Okay, got it.
You could have 100 rabbits per acre. It gets into some interesting math. This table can also be found in the zoning ordinance for Ward County. They keep that table updated in their zoning ordinance, as it is much more applicable to their land use enforcement than it is to ours. However, these people in the ETJ are county residents, and some of them do have large lots. And it makes sense for us to allow them some smaller scale hobby farming, if you will.
Yeah, thank you. And I will probably trust you and vote for this, but at the same time, this was a lot of information hidden under a small paragraph for us to look at and collectively approve. I can imagine that any one section could warrant discussion individually rather than taken as 6 or 7 different sections. But be that as it may, I may trust the system here.
Vice Chair Bauman.
A couple of comments. Want to, first of all, thank our staff for working forward on the Gateway Corridor overlay. I know this is something that was a part of our 2040 comprehensive plan, so it's nice to see some progress happening with that. It's a great tool for beautification, and I know that's a big thing, especially as people come to our community, the different entry points. We want to make sure we have a great first impression on those individuals. I appreciate the clarity as well on the industrial setbacks and the movement away from arbitrary numbers. I want to express thank you to the City Council for hearing our recommendations and once again revisiting their recommendations on lighting enforcement. I do have a question on the fencing and the landscaping requirements, largely because I was on the Zoning Ordinance Steering Committee at the time that we brought those recommendations to the Planning Commission and the City Council. And at that time, we felt that those were the best directions forward for our city and our community. And so I'm wondering if you can explain 2 things with fencing. We'll start with that, and then I have another question on landscaping. But my 2 questions with fencing are, what is the change or why the recommended change? And then in the code, we reference certain examples or specific points when that chain link fencing with or without privacy slats would be not applicable and a different fencing type would be required, probably a more expensive fencing type. Can you talk through for the general public what those times would be when a commercial entity would need to have a privacy fence that's not chain link in place?
Okay, so for the first question, this is primarily driven by some serious pushback from developers and the cost of building materials. When you get into wood and PVC building materials, we're getting to the point now where the difference in quote between a chain link fence with privacy slats to screen outdoor storage and using wood or PVC can be tens of thousands of dollars. So we're starting to get some pushback even from national developers, people that are operating nationwide. And we're finding that we may be an outlier on this one. We might be asking for a little bit too much and putting too much of a burden on developers, which could then be a roadblock to economic development, which is also a huge goal of our comprehensive plan, bringing in, new businesses, growing our, business tax base. And it's primarily driven by the cost of building materials. Wood and PVC, non-weatherable materials are incredibly expensive, and chain link fencing with privacy slats, which may be less aesthetically pleasing. However, it's not a burden for the developer. We're running into where we're creating roadblocks to other goals of the comprehensive plan. So,
A follow-up question that doesn't impact the requirement about screening dumpster and recycling receptacles, correct? Those are still screened, shaded, and blocked from the wind, correct?
Vice Chairman Bowman, yes, that is those other areas of the code. We're talking about buffer yards and trash enclosures and screening of, I believe we included loading. I'll let Dan, we'll give credit to our associate planner, Dan, who wrote this particular section, did the research on it, which sections are still required to have wood and PVC.
Yeah, Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Bauman. So the sections that are still required, one of them is like screening for headlights. Obviously, chain link with slats is not going to screen any kind of light whatsoever, so that is still required. And then the sections with the dumpster enclosures are still left intact. Really, the only thing we have moved to change is outdoor screening. So like Runnings, for example, has a large outdoor screening area. And the difference in the cost of the fence to go from chain link with slats to wood or PVC would have been like 50 or 60 grand more after talking with Dakota Fence. And so also we don't have a permit for any kind of fencing, and so we have no way to stop anyone from doing it until we see them do it, and then there's the enforcement mechanism, which is very ugly. Yeah, so.
Okay. And so drilling down on a specific, the buffer yard between a commercial property and a residential property, would that be chain link or chain link with privacy slats, or would that be required for wood PVC site blocking?
The way it is written currently, and I believe it's that an industrial property to a commercial can use chain link with slats, but any commercial or industrial property to a residential would require just a 20-foot landscape buffer. It does not require any kind of fencing.
Okay. So no change there.
No change, no.
Okay.
It was really only just the outdoor storage areas, and the rationale behind that is those outdoor storage areas are very large fenced areas. And so that's where the large cost burden comes. It doesn't come from needing to just screen some headlights with like a 4-foot fence or anything like that for like McDonald's, for example.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's important to point out that buffer yards between commercial and industrial are required to be 20 feet unless they are unless there's a right of way, which then we can administratively move it down to 10 feet. The only place where a fence comes into play on a buffer yard is a more intensive industrial to a less intensive commercial. You can cut the buffer yard by including a fence, but it's between two business properties. Our LDO does not allow for a reduced buffer yard by using fencing as a screening material between residential and a more intensive use. Okay. It requires the full buffer yard and to be landscaped. So,
cool. Thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions for city staff?
One more.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I have my landscaping questions still.
Yes.
At the time that the zoning ordinance recommended not allowing landscaping rock in the right-of-way, so this is the area between the sidewalk and the road on a home, we felt that it was really promoting a landscaping tool called Rocks and Roundup. The idea that you just put rocks and then you're not responsible for growing or carrying anything. You just spray some Roundup on it and you call it good, and it's dead, low maintenance or no maintenance. The idea was to move away from that with the encouragement of planting trees, landscaping, beautifying neighborhoods and communities in that way, and really encouraging developers and property owners to step up to the plate and do that. And I say that in full acknowledgement that the property that I own is not in compliance, because we do have rocks, we don't round up, and we have worked to landscape and hopefully beautify the neighborhood. But I just want to throw that out there for any neighbors watching, not non-conforming. But what are the advantages? Why are we doing that? What's the thought or rationale behind that change?
Chairman Offerdahl, Vice Chairman Bauman, this was brought to us as a recommendation out of engineering and public works, and I really wish one of them had attended to kind of answer those questions, but it's my understanding that we are losing that battle. Again, it's one of those non-permitted things. We don't permit landscaping, and so it's ending up, we're going out and having all of these enforcement cases. Some of these properties predate the ordinance, and so my neighbor can do it. Why can't I do it? I'm just doing what he did, and now I'm in trouble with the city, and he's still got rock, and he's not. It's unless we're looking to permit ahead of time some of these things, they become impossible to regulate, I guess. I see where you're coming from. Some of these property owners have done beautiful rock landscaping in their right-of-way. Again, this all I will throw in there that is at the owner's risk. If we need to come in and replace a water line inside of the right-of-way and we dig up their landscaping rock, we are not responsible to replace your landscaping to its previous glory. We just throw the rocks back down and it's on you to fix it. We do replant grass, but I mean, obviously we don't maintain it after we plant the grass. So kind of falls into that same thing. Other than it's without a permit process, it's difficult to regulate. That is, I think, the primary driving factor, in that we're having a hard time stopping people ahead of time, and then we're telling them they have to rip out $20,000 or $10,000 or even $2,000 worth of landscaping that they've done, even though their neighbor may or may not have this exact same thing. So it's become a very difficult. It's my understanding that is the driving factor behind this. Again, this came out of engineering. So that's the best explanation I can give you from the conversations that we've had.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any further questions for city staff? Okay, if not, I'll open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to speak first? Okay. Is anybody that wishes to speak in favor of this agenda item? Is there anybody that wishes to speak in opposition of this agenda item? Anybody wish to speak in favor or against? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll turn it over to the commissioners for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve based on staff findings of fact.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Longton.
I'll second it.
Got a second by Commissioner Trudell. Any discussion? Vice Chair Bowman.
I'm going to vote yes for this, as is. I think there's a lot of good work that's going on, and in deference to city staff and the people who are doing the work, I'm going to listen to the recommendation, but I am also going to say, let's do better than rocks and Roundup, folks. Like we can do that. And I know it's difficult. If we can improve our neighborhoods by landscaping and going the extra step, let's do it. I don't want to give up on the vision, but I can appreciate the reality. So I'm going to be a yes, but I do hope our community continues to invest in high quality boulevard landscaping that makes for great neighborhoods. And that's my soapbox. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say I very, very much appreciate the rocks and Roundup comment. I'm going to try and use that in the next week and get it in my head.
Any further discussion? Okay, and seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Iverson,
Yes.
Kibler,
Yes.
Longton,
Yes.
Menum,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Pontanila,
Yes.
Trudell,
Yes.
Doctor.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6.1. It was just added some recent documentation from the previous planning commission meeting. There was just some notes that were passed out, and they just wanted them on official. You guys can look them up. Nothing to motion on or anything. It's just for informational purpose from last month's meeting. Other than that, any other miscellaneous or discussion items? Did you want to talk about these documents at all?
Staff doesn't have any additional.
Okay.
Just wanted
Nothing?
to provide those with
Okay,
you,
and
with
I
those documents on the record. type
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely, and we appreciate that. So I did get a chance to read them. Anything else that we'd like to discuss? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to agenda item number 7, and that's adjournment. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.